My husband said, "This Saturday, all 12 members of my family are staying at our house for 2 weeks." I replied, "I just had surgery. Please postpone it until next weekend." He said coldly, "No one is waiting. Just do as I say." But when they arrived, at 10:07 on a Saturday morning, I watched 3 packed SUVs pull into my driveway on a phone screen the size of my hand. I wasn't home. I was in room 214 of a recovery facility 11 miles away, propped at exactly 30 degrees, with a back brace under my cardigan and a cup of decaf going cold on the tray table. The doorbell camera caught everything. Suitcases strapped to the roofs, coolers, beach bags, pillows pressed flat against the windows like the cars themselves couldn't breathe. 12 of my husband's relatives spilled out onto my lawn. My mother-in-law was giving orders before her car door even shut. My father-in-law stretched his back like a man arriving at a resort. And my husband, Grant, walked ahead of all of them, phone still in his hand, and climbed the porch steps of the house he had lived in for 16 years. Then he stopped. His hand froze an inch from the door handle. 2 sealed pages were taped to my front door at eye level. And through the window beside them, a stranger in white coveralls was walking across my living room. I'm told my husband's face went white before he finished reading the first line. To understand what was on those pages, and why, for the first time in 22 years of marriage, I was the one who wasn't waiting, you have to go back 6 days, to a Tuesday night, to a man standing in a bedroom doorway, giving an order to a woman in a back brace. 5 days after my spine surgery, my husband stood in our bedroom doorway and gave me an order. "This Saturday, all 12 members of my family are staying at our house for 2 weeks. Have everything ready." I laughed. I actually laughed, which pulled at the incision along my lower back, a 4-inch line held together with surgical glue and good intentions. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "Grant, I had surgery 5 days ago. I can't lift more than 10 pounds. I can't stand longer than 15 minutes. That wasn't drama. That was the discharge sheet. On the previous Thursday, Dr. Amara Osi, an orthopedic spine surgeon with 16 years of other people's vertebrae behind her, had spent 4 hours and 40 minutes fusing my L4 and L5. When I woke up, a nurse taught me how to roll out of bed like a log so I wouldn't twist the hardware they'd just screwed into my spine. My restrictions were printed in bold: no bending, no lifting over 10 pounds, no twisting, no standing longer than 15 minutes at a stretch. Grant looked at his phone, not at me. "They've already planned the trip." "Then ask them to postpone it," I said. "Please, until next weekend, even 1 week. No one is waiting. Just do as I say." Then he walked out. I heard him typing a text before he reached the hallway. Not after he thought about it. Not after he slept on it. Before he reached the hallway. As if my answer had been a formality he'd already skipped past. I lay there in my back brace and stared at the ceiling. The mark from the hospital I bore was still on my hand, a small yellow-green smudge over the vein. 22 years of marriage, 22 summers of his family rolling in like a traveling circus that never once bought a ticket. I knew exactly what "have everything ready" meant, because I had been everything for 2 decades. His mother, Marilyn, arriving first and inspecting my kitchen cabinets like a health inspector with a grudge, running one finger along the shelf paper, then claiming my daughter's old bedroom because it stayed cool in the afternoon. His father, Harold, taking the best chair in the living room, a leather recliner he'd personally broken in over 20 summers, and handing out advice about everything from lawn care to my own mortgage. My mortgage. The one with only my name on it, though I doubt he ever noticed that part. His brother Doug's teenagers, Mason and Kayla. His sister Patricia's 9-year-old twins, Lily and Ella. His Aunt June and Uncle Bert. 12 people. 14 with us. Every year, I bought the special groceries. Wheat-free everything for Marilyn, who'd never been tested for anything but had read an article once. Oat milk for Lily. The specific rice crackers for Mason, who actually did have a diagnosis and was, for the record, the politest person in that entire bloodline. I inflated the air mattresses with a hand pump because the electric one bothered Harold's ears. I washed and folded 14 sets of towels. I cooked 3 meals a day for 2 weeks straight. I drove sleepy relatives to the airport before sunrise and cleaned bathrooms that got dirty again within the hour. Grant called it family time. I called it unpaid hotel management. Not once in 22 years had anyone asked if the timing worked for me. That night I couldn't sleep, so around 9:30 I did something small and stupid and life-changing. I shuffled to the kitchen, 8 minutes for a trip that used to take 40 seconds, for water and my 10 p.m. pill. The old iPad we keep on the counter for recipes lit up when I bumped it. It signed into Grant's account. It always has been. His messages sync to it, a fact he has never once remembered. At the top of the screen, a group thread named Carver Summer with a little palm tree emoji. I told myself not to read it. I told myself it was nothing, just logistics, just his family being his family. I read it. The thread had been created on May 24th, 4 days before my surgery. They had picked the dates, divided up the bedrooms, my bedrooms, and planned a fishing day, all before I ever went under. And then I found the message that ended my marriage, though I didn't know it yet. Sent from Grant's phone at 11:42 a.m. on May 28th. I didn't need to check my calendar to know where he'd been sitting when he sent it. He'd been in the surgical waiting room at St. Luke's. I was on the table. Dr. Osei was 2 hours into my spine. Green light for the 6th. She'll be squared away by then. Squared away. Like a garage. Like a filing cabinet. My hands went cold around the water glass. Not shaking. Cold. The way they go when your body figures something out before your brain agrees to it. My husband had confirmed a 12-person, 2-week invasion of my home while a surgeon had me open on a table, and his only note about my recovery was the same phrase he'd use for a tackle box. I texted him from the kitchen, 20 feet from where he sat watching baseball highlights. "Can we talk about Saturday?" 3 dots. Then, "It's handled, Ev." Handled. Squared away. I stood in my own kitchen in a back brace and understood that in the language my husband spoke, I was not a person recovering from spinal fusion. I was a logistics problem that had already been solved. I went back to bed the way Dr. Osie's nurse taught me. Sit, lean, lift the legs together, roll like a log. And I lay there doing the kind of math you can only do at night. The summer of 2018, I had walking pneumonia, a fever of 101.4, confirmed by the urgent care doctor who told me to rest for a week. Marilyn's crew arrived 2 days later. I made blueberry pancakes for 11 people with a chest that crackled like tissue paper. And when I set the platter down, Marilyn tasted one and said, "A little less lemon next time, dear?" I told myself it was one comment. I told myself hospitality was just love with its sleeves rolled up. In 2011, I asked Grant, gently, over a nice dinner I'd cooked to soften the request, if we could skip one summer. Just one. Nora was applying to colleges. Money was tight. I was tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Grant put his fork down and said, "You're embarrassing me." Not, "Let's talk about it." Not, "I hear you. You're embarrassing me." As if my exhaustion were a stain on his shirt. I told myself he was stressed. I told myself every marriage has one line you learn to step over. Our 20th anniversary fell on a Tuesday in the middle of the 2024 visit. I know because I'd circled it on the kitchen calendar in red back in January, the way you flag something you're afraid will drown. That morning, I drove June and Bert to the airport at 4:50 a.m., came home, made breakfast for 11, and found out at noon that Grant had gone to the lake with Doug and the kids. He got back at 7, sunburned and cheerful, and when I said the word anniversary, he snapped his fingers like he'd forgotten to grab milk. "We'll celebrate when everyone's gone," he said. Everyone was gone 9 days later. We never celebrated. I bought myself a slice of grocery store cake on day 10 and ate it standing over the sink between loads of guest towels and told myself it was funny. That's the thing about 22 years of small swallowed moments. Individually, each one is survivable. You can even make a joke of it. But lie awake at 1 a.m. in a back brace and let them line up single file, and they stop looking like moments. They look like a policy. Year after year, I stepped over it. I stepped over it carrying air mattresses and grocery bags and folded towels, and I called the stepping keeping the peace because the alternative had no name I was ready to say out loud. But at 1 in the morning, while Grant snored beside me, I remembered something he had forgotten a long time ago. I eased out of bed, inch by inch, log roll, sit, wait for the burn along the incision to settle, and opened the hall closet. My father's old fireproof box sat on the top shelf, exactly where it had lived for 12 years, black and squat and patient. It weighed 9 pounds. I know because I weighed it once, back when moving it was nothing. I slid it off the shelf against my stomach, both arms, and carried the whole reason for my next 15 years down the hall. I locked myself in the bathroom and read one document by phone flashlight, a deed. County recorder's stamp in the corner, dated April 3rd, 2014. The house on Linden Court, the house my parents, Walter and Ruth Marsh, bought in 1987, the house where my mother planted a row of hydrangeas along the south fence, the house Grant and I moved into in 2010 to help care for her and never left. When she passed, it came to me through my father's trust. The grantee line read, Evelyn Marsh Carver, a married woman, as her sole and separate property. I read it twice. Sole, separate. Grant had wanted his name added back in 2014. Simpler for taxes, he'd said. The estate attorney had advised me, carefully, in her calm corner office voice, to leave the title exactly as it was. Grant sulked for a week, then forgot. Grant forgot a great many things about that house. Who paid the property taxes out of the account my father left? Whose name was on the roof loan in 2019? Whose mother's hydrangeas he backed over with the mower every single June? For 12 years, he had walked through that front door like a landlord. He was a guest. He had always been a guest. The most permanent guest in a house that had hosted so many. Then, for the first time in 5 days, I smiled. The next morning, after Grant left for work at 7:50 with a travel mug I built out of pure muscle memory, I called Rebecca Sloan. Rebecca was the attorney who handled my parents' estate years ago. 26 years in practice, estate, and real property. The kind of lawyer who says nothing for 10 full seconds and then says exactly one correct thing. We talked for 40 minutes. I told her about the surgery, the 12 relatives, the 2 weeks, the message sent from the surgical waiting room. She didn't gasp. Lawyers with 26 years and don't gasp. She asked questions in a flat, kind voice. Was the title still solely mine? Yes. Had we ever refinanced it jointly? No. Had marital funds ever paid the mortgage or taxes? No. My father's account had down to the roof in 2019, $18,400 receipts in the box. Then she laid it out. The house was my sole and separate property. Grant, as my spouse, had every right to live in it. His 12 relatives had precisely none. They were invitees, and the only person with authority to invite overnight guests onto that property was me. She was firm on one point. No changing the locks on a resident spouse. No drama that could be turned around on me later. We don't do anything a judge would squint at, she said. We do it clean, in writing, with dates. She would draft a formal letter. She would attach a certified copy of the recorded deed. And she said one sentence I wrote on a sticky note and pressed to the bathroom mirror where I'd see it every time doubt came looking. Setting a boundary is not cruelty. She gave me homework too, because good lawyers always do. Photograph every document in the fireproof box, the deed, the trust, the 2019 roof loan, 12 years of property tax statements paid from my father's account, and email her the images with the metadata intact. Screenshot the Carver summer thread, including the 11:42 a.m. message from the surgical waiting room. Save Marilyn's list, save everything, date everything, editorialize nothing. If this ever ends up in front of a judge, she said, I want it boring. Boring wins. I spent an hour on the bathroom floor with my phone in my father's box, building the most boring folder of my life. It felt like loading a dishwasher made of evidence. By the end, my back ached and my hands were steady, and I understood something about myself. I had spent 2 decades being organized in the service of other people's comfort. It turned out the skill transferred. Before we hung up, she asked how I planned to recover with a construction crew of relatives in the house, and that's when I finally reread my own discharge paperwork. The folder Grant had tossed on the counter at St. Luke's without opening. Page 4. A pre-authorization from my insurance, arranged by Dana Whitfield, RN, the hospital's discharge case manager, 14 years of getting broken people to the right beds, up to 14 days of post-surgical recovery care at Riverbend Post-Acute Recovery, in-network, approved before I ever left the hospital. Private room, nursing staff down the hall, physical therapy on site. I had declined it at discharge. I remember the exact words I used. My husband will take care of me. I called Dana. She pulled my file and I could hear her typing. The authorization's still active, Mrs. Carver. Beds available Friday. You should have come the first time. I know, I said. I got a second opinion. That afternoon, I made 3 more calls. 3 different companies. I asked each one the same question. Can you start this Saturday morning? All 3 gave me the same answer. Yes, ma'am, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. The first call was Delgado & Sons Hardwood. Ray Delgado, 31 years of floors, a voice like a tamped down cigar. The oak floors in that house hadn't been refinished since my father did them himself in the 90s, and Marilyn had personally informed me they were a disgrace at least once a summer for a decade. Full sand and refinish, main level and stairs. Once the finish went down, nobody could walk on those floors for 72 hours minimum, and Ray recommended a full week before furniture came back. 4,150s. The second was Petrakis Brothers painting. All 4 bedrooms, the upstairs hallway, ceilings included. Gus Petrakis said his crew could work around the floor guys. No problem, we do it all the time. $3,600. The third was Bellhaven moving and storage. 2 men, 1 truck, everything off the main level and out of the bedrooms. Beds, dressers, Harold's throne of a recliner, into a climate-controlled unit for 30 days. 17 times 80, $10,230 total, paid from my father's account. The same account that fixed the roof. Not $1 of it grants, which mattered to me in a way I can't fully explain, except to say that when you finally stand up for yourself, it helps to be standing on your own floor. The renovation wasn't spite, and I need you to understand that, because it's the part Grant never has. The house genuinely needed it. I had asked for it, mildly, for years, and been told it wasn't the right time. It turned out the right time was Saturday, 8 o'clock. Wednesday evening, Marilyn's email arrived. Subject line, the list. 41 grocery items, sorted by aisle. Room assignments. She'd given herself Nora's old room naturally, since it stays cool. A note that June and Bert would need a ride to the airport the following Sunday at 4:50 a.m. And a P.S. Don't fuss over your back, dear. Carver women were up doing laundry 2 days after their C-sections. I called her. One last honest try. I can say that now with a clean conscience. I told her about the fusion, the hardware, the 10-pound limit. There was a pause, and then she said brightly, Grant said it was outpatient. A little disc thing. A little disc thing. 4 hours and 40 minutes. 2 titanium screws and a rod. Grant hadn't just ignored my surgery. He had shrunk it, retold it, edited me down into a woman with a little disc thing who could certainly manage pancakes for 14. That night, I made my last attempt to fix it inside the marriage, because I am nothing if not thorough. I asked Grant, calmly, over the dinner I had no business standing long enough to cook, whether we could at least hire a cleaning service for the 2 weeks. I'd priced it. $340 total. Waste of money, he said, not looking up. You'll be up by then. Thursday morning, while confirming the contractor deposits, I saw the pending charges on our joint account. Big Bass Charters, $500. The deposit for the men's fishing day. Total wine, $181.60. $340 to keep his recovering wife off her knees scrubbing bathrooms. A waste of money. $681.60 for a boat and a beverage program. Family time. I laughed, one sharp bark in the empty kitchen, and it pulled the incision so hard my eyes watered. Even my own body was telling me to stop finding this funny. By Thursday, everything was signed. The contracts came through by e-signature. Delgado at 2:14, Petrakis at 3:05, Bellhaven at 4:22. I put a spare key in a lockbox on the porch rail and texted Ray the code. Rebecca's paralegal couriered a sealed envelope to Ray's office. 2 pages, painter's tape, and 1 instruction. Front door, eye level, before 10. Ray texted back, 31 years hanging doors, first time hanging a letter. Thursday night at 9:58, the plan nearly died. Marilyn, in the group chat, thinking we drive up tomorrow night instead, missed the Saturday traffic. I read it standing at the kitchen counter and felt my pulse in the incision, an actual heartbeat in my spine. Friday night, before the cruise, before Riverbend, me, mid-packing, ambushed by headlights and coolers, everything, the contracts, the letter, the clean exit Rebecca had built, depended on Saturday. 40 minutes. I watched that thread for 40 minutes, not breathing right. Then Patricia, can't. Twins recital runs till 8. Harold, my INR check is 4:40 Friday. Doctor's orders. Marilyn, fine. Saturday, 10 sharp. I exhaled so hard I had to sit down on a kitchen chair, one hand flat on the counter. Saved by a dance recital and a blood thinner appointment. When people tell you the universe doesn't have a sense of humor, don't believe them. Friday, Grant was in a wonderful mood. He whistled. He carried the good cooler up from the basement for the caravan, not for me. And at 5:40, he headed out to Doug's house to plan the big arrival, spend the night, and ride in with the convoy like a parade marshal. On his way to the truck, standing in the driveway with the window glass between us doing absolutely nothing, he took a call on speaker. Doug's voice. Ev, good with all this? house. And my husband of 22 years said, she'll manage, she always does. A little laugh. Queen of managing. Then he leaned back in the front door, said, Mom emailed you the meal plan. Try not to make it weird, Ev, and left. Queen of managing. For once, Grant, you were absolutely right. While he was gone, I packed one suitcase, 10 pounds at a time, which is a humbling way to pack a life. 6 trips up and down that hallway. Comfortable clothes, my medical folder, my pill organizer. A framed photo of my parents standing by the hydrangeas my mother planted. My father's hand on her shoulder, both of them squinting into a 1994 sun. On the 4th trip, my legs shook on the stairs, and I sat down on the bottom step for 11 minutes. Hand on the banister, my father sanded by hand and let the house hold me up one more time. I had a place to stay. Doctor approved. Quiet. Nurses down the hall. My insurance had okayed it days ago. It was printed right in my discharge paperwork. Grant never read that paperwork. He never read anything of mine. I left a folded note on the kitchen counter. 6 lines. I counted them twice. Grant, the house is closed for renovation until June 20th. The letter on the door explains, I'm recovering where my surgeon wanted me all along. It was in the discharge papers you never read. My father's fireproof box sat in the hall closet for 12 years. So did the deed. You said no one was waiting. You were right. I stopped. Evelyn. I took a photo of it and emailed the photo to Rebecca at 7:12 p.m. Time-stamped, clean, in writing, with dates. As I drove away, slowly, seat all the way back, the Outback's mirrors doing the twisting my spine couldn't, Grant texted me. Mom says they may stay longer than 2 weeks if everyone is having a good time. I didn't answer. He still believed the only surprise waiting Saturday morning would be 12 suitcases. At Riverbend, a nurse named Priya took my bag, walked me to room 214, and asked what I needed. I honestly didn't know how to answer. Nobody had asked me that in so long the question felt foreign, like a phrase from a language I'd studied in school and lost. That night I slept 9 hours. No one woke me to ask where anything was. Saturday, 7:52 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ray, done, good tape. A photo of my front door, 2 sealed pages at eye level, perfectly square. The man hangs things for a living. At 8 eyes on the dot, the doorbell camera showed the Delgado & Sons box truck, the Petrakis van, and the Bellhaven crew arriving in a line like a very small, very purposeful parade. By 9:40, my living room was empty down to the baseboards. Harold's recliner went up the truck ramp at 9:12, and I will not pretend I felt nothing. The Sanders started on the far side of the main level. Upstairs, the Petrakis crew rolled primer over the room Marilyn had annexed a decade ago. At 10:07, just after 10, 3 packed SUVs pulled into my driveway. Doug's Suburban, Patricia's Odyssey, Harold's Buick bringing up the rear. Suitcases strapped to the roofs, coolers, beach bags, pillows pressed against the windows, 12 relatives spilled out onto my lawn. The doorbell camera has decent audio. Marilyn started giving orders before her car door even shut. Blue cases by the front step. Evelyn knows which room we use. Harold stretched his back, both hands on his hips, surveying the yard like a man about to offer it advice. Aunt June asked if lunch was ready. Grant walked ahead of all of them, phone still in his hand, and climbed the porch steps. Then he stopped, his hand froze an inch from the door handle. 2 sealed pages were taped to my front door at eye level, and through the window beside them, a stranger in white coveralls was walking across my living room, laying a paper path over freshly sanded oak. I'm told my husband's face went white before he finished reading the first line. The first page was on the letterhead of Rebecca Sloan, attorney at law. I'd approved every word Thursday, so I can quote the parts that mattered. Freaky. The real property located at 34 Linden Court is owned solely by Evelyn Marsh Carver as her sole and separate property, acquired by inheritance, and so titled since April 3, 2014. No overnight guests have been authorized by the owner. The premises are an active renovation site through June 20th and are not habitable during that period per contractor and insurance requirements. All inquiries regarding the property should be directed to this office. The second page was a certified copy of the recorded deed, one name on the grantee line, highlighted in yellow because Rebecca is 26 years thorough. On the camera, I watched 12 people arrange themselves around my porch like a jury. Doug read over Grant's shoulder and stepped back with his hands up, the universal gesture of a man declining to co-sign. Christine, Doug's wife, photographed the deed page with her phone. Not to fight it, I'd learned. To believe it. Marilyn marched up the steps, read for approximately 4 seconds, and knocked on my door like it owed her money. Ray Delgado opened at 8 inches, dust mask pulled down around his neck, clipboard in hand. Job site, ma'am. Can't let you in. We're sanding today, sealing tomorrow. Once the finish is down, nobody walks on these floors for 72 hours minimum. This is my son's house. Ray looked at his clipboard the way only a man with 31 years of clipboards can. Work order says Evelyn Carver. She's the owner. Only name I've got. And then he closed the door, gently, professionally, 8 inches back to 0. Grant stepped back off the porch and did something the camera caught in full. He scanned the driveway, looked past the caravan to the empty spot where my Outback lives, walked to the garage and cupped his hands against the window glass. Then he came back around front, opened the storm door, and knocked on his own front door. Knocked on the house he'd walked into like a landlord for 16 years and called my name twice. Evelyn. Evelyn. It had genuinely not occurred to him until that second that I might not be inside. In his script, I was always inside. I came with a house, like a water heater. You could order 2 weeks of hospitality from me the way you set a thermostat, and the temperature would simply be right when you arrived. Watching him stand there, mouth slightly open, holding a certified copy of the one document that made everything make sense, I felt the strangest thing. Not triumph, recognition. He looked exactly the way I'd felt 5 nights earlier, lying in a back brace, learning what I was to him. Marilyn turned to Grant. Everyone turned to Grant. And Grant, who had spent 22 years telling telling that porch full of people that this was his house, his hospitality, his generous open door, stood there holding a letter that said, in certified county language, that he had been introducing them to my inheritance. The twins, bless them, had already lost interest and were crouched by the fence saying hi to the neighbor's cat through the pickets, waving up at the doorbell camera like it might wave back. Mason quietly picked Aunt June's cooler back up and carried it to the Suburban without being asked. The kids were never the problem. The kids have never once been the problem. My phone started at 10:12. 10:12, missed call. Grant. 10:14, missed call. Grant. 10:15, what did you do? 10:17, where is the furniture, Evelyn? 10:19, missed call. 10:22, my family is standing on the lawn. 10:26, answer me. 10:31, this is insane, you've lost it. At 10:44, I sent the one reply Rebecca and I had scripted, and nothing more. The house is closed for renovation until June 20th. I'm recovering as my surgeon directed. Anything about the property goes through Rebecca Sloan's office. Then I set the phone face down on the tray table, and Priya brought my 11 o'clock pill, and 11 miles away, 12 people stood on my lawn learning who had been holding up the sky. They scattered by early afternoon. June and Bert turned their Buick around and drove the 4 hours home. June mailed me a card 2 weeks later, an actual card, with actual handwriting. We never knew. We're sorry. The lemon was always perfect. Patricia's family salvaged the week with a lakeside rental. Marilyn and Harold took a room at the Hampton Inn to deal with this, dealt with nothing, and went home Monday. Grant moved into his mother's guest room. Sit with that for a second because I have, many times, with something I'm not proud enough to call peace, but won't insult by calling anything else. The man who volunteered my spine to run a 14-person hotel spent his summer under Marilyn's roof where the cabinets get inspected. The thermostat is not a democracy, and breakfast has opinions about you. He could have come back to the house after the floors cured. Rebecca was scrupulous about that. He was never barred, not for 1 hour. He chose not to sleep in a bedroom with no bed. He chose his mother's regime over an air mattress in his wife's empty house. And honestly, it was the most self-aware decision he made all year. Monday at 9:05 a.m., he called Rebecca's office and used words like illegal and my house. Rebecca let him finish. Then she read him the recording date off the deed, offered to mail him a copy, and wished him a good morning. She billed me for 6 minutes. Best 6 minutes I ever bought. The texts from Christine came Sunday night, and they were the part I hadn't planned for. I owe you an apology. Grant told us it was outpatient, a little disc thing. And Evelyn, he's told us for years that you insisted on hosting, that you'd be hurt if we stayed anywhere else. She attached a screenshot from the Carver summer thread from back in May. Grant, writing, Ev lives for this? You know her. Ev lives for this. 22 years of pancakes, and the man had been forging my signature on the invitation the whole time. Dana Whitfield called on day 3 to check on me, the way she apparently checks on everyone, because some people carry their 14 years of experience like a clipboard and some carry it like a lamp. At my 2-week follow-up, Dr. Osi looked at the incision, looked at my chart from Riverbend's physical therapists, and said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm resting in a building full of professionals, I said. Like I prescribed, she said. Revolutionary. Grant came to Riverbend once, 19 days in, holding grocery store roses, still wearing their price sticker. I watched him on the lobby camera from the PT room and asked the front desk to tell him I wasn't receiving visitors. He left a letter. I read it that night once. It contained the words, reset, regroup, before the holidays, and we can put this behind us. It did not contain the words sorry. 4 pages. Not one sorry. He had managed to write me the way he read me, skipping everything that mattered. That was the night I stopped deliberating. Rebecca filed at the end of July. The math of leaving turned out to be almost embarrassingly simple, which tells you something about the previous 22 years. Everything I owned had my name on it. Everything he valued had his. He kept his truck, his 401k, his boat fund, his family's good opinion for exactly as long as Christine's screenshots stayed off the group chat. I kept my father's house, my mother's hydrangeas, and a spine full of titanium that set off precisely one metal detector all summer at the county courthouse on the day I signed. It's mid-September now. The fusion is solid. Dr. Osi showed me the x-ray. My own spine scaffolded in bright white lines, and I thought, there's the only person who ever reinforced my backbone, and I paid her through insurance. The cane went back to the medical supply store in August. The floors came out the color of honey. When the Bellhaven men carried the furniture back in, I had them put everything in different places than it had been for 20 years, and I donated the recliner, some thrown. It took 2 of them to lift it, and neither one asked me to make lunch. Nora flew in from Denver the first weekend of September. My daughter walked through the front door, looked at the floors, the fresh paint, the photo of her grandparents by the hydrangeas back on the mantle where it belonged, and said, Mom, finally, we made blueberry pancakes for 2, with exactly the right amount of lemon. Marilyn left 1 voicemail in August. I've kept it, unreturned, the way you keep a receipt. In it, she says the family overreacted, that no one meant any harm, and that they'd love to try again next summer, at a better time for everyone. At a better time for everyone. 23 years in, and there it finally was. The sentence I'd been waiting for, arriving only after the locks of ownership, not the doors, had quietly changed. The hydrangeas bloomed late this year, big, soft blue heads leaning over the south fence like they were checking on me. I cut 3 stems for the kitchen table, which is the correct number for a table set for 1 or 2 when Nora visits, and a number I chose without asking anyone. People ask me, Nora asks me, Christine asks me, the woman I've become asks the woman I was, why it took a spine surgeon to make me stand up straight. I don't have a clever answer. Some houses hold their deeds in fire boxes for 12 years, patient in the dark, waiting for someone to remember what's already theirs. I was one of those houses that's That's the best I can do. Grant said no one was waiting. He was wrong about the house. It had been waiting under my name the entire time, but he was right about me. Nobody's waiting on me anymore, least of all me. He stood in my bedroom doorway and ordered me to have everything ready by Saturday. For the first time in 22 years, I did exactly as he said.